French macarons kind of seem like there's more ways to mess them up than there is to make them right. Let's talk about that. Coming up next on the Sugar Geek Show. So today we're making chocolate macarons. This is based off of my super famous vanilla macaron recipe. But the video that I posted doesn't have any talking, so people are like, Liz, I want you to talk. I want you to explain more. So here it is. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is put together our macaron batter. This is the exact same recipe, except for that I've subbed out 10 grams of powdered sugar for 10 grams of cocoa powder. You can use Hershey's, you can use Cocoa Berry, that's what I use, Dutch, doesn't matter. It just has to be delicious. Probably should do this into a bigger bowl. All my bowls are dirty because I've been testing this recipe for 3 days. Okay, this first sifting is just to kind of break up any of the big clumps and to remove any big pieces of almond flour if you have them. If you want the tops of your macarons to be super smooth, we're gonna have to pulse them a couple times in a food processor. I don't usually do this, but I'm looking to make some super shiny chocolate macarons. Make sure you take it off and kind of shake it around a couple times. Just make sure everything from the bottom is getting mixed up. All right, I did that about 10 times. All right, let's sift into an actual bigger bowl this time. This time we're just gonna tap like this. And if there's any big lumps remaining, toss those out. And when I say big lumps, I don't mean these little pieces of powdered sugar and almond flour that have just kind of clumped together. I'm just gonna break those down and then just continue tapping. But you can see there's just a couple of big pieces in there. So I'm just gonna toss those out because those will make the tops of the macarons look lumpy. If you had a ton of big lumps in there, then you would definitely want to replace those lumps with more sifted almond flour and powdered sugar. But if it's just a couple, then don't worry about replacing them. Okay, time to whip up our egg whites. Room temperature egg whites that have been aged in the refrigerator overnight. You cannot use pasteurized egg whites, they won't turn out. So go ahead and start whisking up those egg whites until they're a little bit foamy, and then you can go ahead and start sprinkling in your sugar in small amounts. Like I just do like maybe a teaspoon at a time, little bits. So that way the sugar has time to incorporate into those egg whites and dissolve and get nice and homogeneous. And we're doing all this on medium speed. Once those egg whites start getting white and foamy and you can start seeing little lines being left in the top of the egg whites from the whisk, you can go ahead and add in your cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is something that stabilizes the egg whites and makes the shells a little bit sturdier, so you really don't want to skip that. In fact, you don't want to skip anything. This recipe is not one of those things where you can just like not measure or just take ingredients out and replace them willy-nilly. It's not going to work out for you. Once your cream of tartar is added, you want to go ahead and whip these on medium-high until we get to the soft peak stage, which means they're starting to get thicker and foamier, but they're not quite where we want them to be. All right, let's take a look at what we got here. I can tell that these are not ready yet because the meringue is still really creamy feeling. It's still kind of soft, and the meringue is not gathering into the mixer. And the peaks still kind of fall over a little bit still. At this point, we can go ahead and add in our flavoring. In this case, it's vanilla. And then keep going. I have undermixed so many times at this stage because I was afraid to overmix my egg whites, but you really want them to be super dense and thick. You can over whip them. You don't want to be curdled and like dry looking, but you do want them to be nice and thick. So this can take like, 3 or 4 minutes to do, depending on your mixer. All right, let's test out this meringue. I can feel that it's a lot denser. It's not as loose, and you can see how the meringue is starting to gather on the inside of the whisk. So that's good. It's very stiff. All right, meringue into the bowl. You don't have to transfer it to a glass bowl, but it's gonna be easier for you to see what I'm doing if it's in a bowl. Okay, mixing in our dry ingredients. You want to just add in maybe a third of this mixture to begin with. And then we're going to start folding by just running our spatula around the outside of the bowl. And the meringue kind of just mixes in the center. And it looks like it's not doing anything, but it is. Occasionally you can cut through the middle like that. I should have used a slightly smaller bowl, but it's okay. At least I think it's okay. Who knows? Maybe I ruined it. Just going around. It's kind of like a dryer. If you think about the outside of your spatula is like the agitator. It's just going around and around. Okay, I'm gonna put this in a smaller bowl because this is not working. It needs to be more like the bowl of the KitchenAid. You can probably hear Ezra in the background. He's eating. Huh, Ezra? All right, continue. That's better. That's much better. Second portion of almond flour. Mixing around and around. We'll call this the washing machine method. The agitator is going around the outside, but it's not doing anything else. Last little bit. You see, it's coming together. You just gotta be patient. Okay, so at this point, it's mostly combined, but it's very lumpy. So this is not gonna work. We want this to be falling off the spatula in a ribbon. So now we need to take out some of this air, but not a lot. So we're gonna take our spatula and kind of hold it flat against the surface and just lightly press down as we spin our bowl, and then agitate again. Back. Lightly press down. Once around, and then agitate. Spin in the batter. And we're going to keep doing that until the batter runs off of the spatula in a ribbon and we can form a figure 8. It's still clumpy, not quite ready. If you don't get it to this figure 8 stage, then your macarons are going to have too much air in them and they're going to explode and crack. If you do too much of this mixing, then your macarons are gonna spread out super far and they're gonna have a hard time setting up and developing that skin. The feet aren't gonna develop, you're gonna have hollow shells. So this is why it's hard, right? You don't know if I've overmixed or undermixed. I get you, I feel you. So just do your best. Try to get your batter looking as much as mine as possible, and just go with it. I mean, the worst that could happen is they don't look super pretty and they still taste yummy, okay? So I know because I ate all of my mess ups and they were delicious. Ooh, look at that. We have a figure 8, people. All right, now it's time to pipe. I'm using an 802 piping tip, which is a slightly smaller piping tip than I usually use because I just feel like I have a little bit more control over the macarons. And we're gonna fill up our piping bag with our batter. We're gonna have exactly enough batter for how many spots we have on our template. I've got my template, which is free on the blog post underneath my parchment paper. We're going to pipe our macaron batter straight up and down onto the parchment just until we're almost to the size of the circle. Stop and then lift up. You can also go around like this if you want. So I just hold it real close to the parchment and then just squeeze. Is there a reason I am starting in the middle? Yes, because I am trying to get my parchment to lay flat. You could also use one of those macaron mats that are like silicone. I hear they work really well, and I plan on doing a experiment in an upcoming video about which one works the best, because I'm curious. We always just used parchment paper when I was in pastry school, so that's kind of what I use now. We, however, did not use templates, so you're welcome. All right, so I have just a teeny tiny bit of batter left over. That's normal. Now we have to do a scary thing and take our pan and bang it on the countertop to help some of those bubbles rise to the surface. And we're gonna do that maybe 5 times. So you should start seeing some little bubbles coming to the surface. And you'll also see little bumps like this right here. I can tell there's a bubble trapped underneath of there. So you can use a toothpick to kind of push the batter away, and it will reveal the bubble that's underneath. Pop it and then push it back. So work quickly because these start developing their shells pretty fast, unless it's super humid. And if it is super humid, then you want to turn on a space heater, because it's actually raining today, so I might have to do that. And that will just warm up the room and help them to dry out faster. You can also take your finger and dip it in a little bit of water and push those down. That works too. You want super smooth, shiny tops. All right, I'm going to set these aside next to my space heater until I can touch them and they have a nice crust formed over the top. That could take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how humid it is in your room. While my macarons are drying, I'm gonna go ahead and make some ganache. I have 5 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate here, or you could use milk or dark, and 4 ounces of heavy cream. And you could heat this heavy cream on the stove top and pour it over the top like you make a traditional ganache, but I'm just gonna microwave it. All right, so these guys are ready. It's been 35 minutes and I can feel the surface. I can actually press down a little bit and it doesn't damage the macarons. So that's how you know when the macarons have dried long enough. When you can touch them and they're not sticky and you can literally feel the skin. Time to bake. All right, I've got Ezra with me because he needs to be held, but I also need to finish this video because it's getting dark outside, huh? Yeah, we gotta do both, okay? So the macarons are out of the oven, they're cooled and they look awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited. You can see the bottoms are pretty flat. This could have baked for maybe 1 more minute. It's just very slightly bumpy. You can see that the feet are just directly underneath the dome, so they're not spreading out. And the top of the dome is nicely rounded, which means that it had plenty of time to dry. So that's good. And you can see on the inside, it's not hollow. The shell is nice and thin and crisp. And the inside is all the way full, and that means for a delicious chewy cookie. Let's fill these. We have our ganache here that's nice and set up, and creamy. Let's just find a couple that are about the same size. Just fill that up with some ganache. You can use buttercream, you can use curd, whatever you want. It's up to you. I mean, look at that. Doesn't that look like a perfect macaron that you would get at a bakery? I mean, I'm kind of proud of us. Macarons taste even better the second day. You can just put them in the refrigerator and let them kind of mellow out and they get even chewier. So good. Or you can freeze the shells in the freezer in an airtight container and just take them out whenever you need some macarons for like a cake or for a dessert or something. I should also mention that it took me 3 different tries to get these macarons perfect. I had plenty of fails. My first batch of meringue was really undermixed and they were all bubbly and rough on top. My second batch was a little bit too overmixed and I ended up getting these little oily spots on top of my shells and a couple little cracks and my feet sort of exploded out the bottom. So when they say third time's a charm, they really mean it. So hopefully this tutorial has helped you gain the confidence to make some French macarons. If you have any questions, leave them for me down in the comments. If you like to see more videos like this one with and without Ezra, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye. Oh yeah. That really is super good. Can't go wrong with chocolate.